If you've been struggling to meet your protein goals, lose weight, eat healthier, or get started on meal prep, then you've come to the right place, because in this video, I'm going to show you some of the simplest ways to meal prep delicious meals to hit your goals in this high protein, low effort series. On this channel, you'll not only get high protein, lower calorie recipes, but lots of health and weight loss tips. I'm Amy, and I've personally lost 40 pounds of fat through high protein, lower calorie recipes and developing healthier habits. Learning and developing these habits have helped me maintain that weight loss for sustainability and flexibility in life so that I can be my healthiest self. And I'm so glad that you're here so that I can help you do the same. In today's video, we're going to go over some easy ways to meal prep lean proteins so that you always have something to eat. I'm also going to show you a series of delicious meals that you can make with this prep protein. If you haven't already seen my chicken series, you're gonna wanna watch those. I've got 5 delicious chicken recipes that are 5 ingredients or less in that series, and I'm going to be doing the same with ground beef now. So let's prep this beef together and make a delicious high protein recipe to enjoy. So you don't have to use beef. You can also do a ground turkey or chicken, but I really like the taste of beef. There's nothing wrong with it. I know some people try to avoid it. In reality, it's a great protein, but the type of beef does matter, especially the fat percentage. So if you get an 80-20, for example, which is the typical fat ratio of a lot of ground beefs you see in the store, it is going to be a lot higher in calories and lower in protein. So for example, 4 ounces of 80-20 ground beef is going to be about 280 calories per serving and 19 grams of protein. Whereas I have 90-10, so it still has that fat content for some nutrition, but it is 190 calories and 22 grams of protein. Of course, if you want, you can also go leaner and get a 93, a 95, or sometimes they even have 99. But I find that when you get super low in fat, the meat can tend to be a little bit chewier and not the best texture. So again, you can use whatever best fits your macros, but if you are trying to lose weight, I would opt for something that's a little bit leaner. Now let's get this cooked together so we can make our first meal, because I'm getting hungry. And since we're gonna be making multiple meals out of this prepped ground beef, we are going to keep it simple. So I'm going to make this whole batch and then use it for a variety of recipes. You can also batch prep your whole meal all at once and make it all together, but I like flexibility. I don't like eating the same thing every day, so I like just having the protein on hand and using different ingredients to build meals. And I'm obsessed with my Caraway non-stick, non-toxic cookware. It's gorgeous and super high quality. So we're gonna let this heat up a bit and then put in our beef. We're gonna do some simple seasonings to make it versatile. Just some salt, pepper, and garlic powder. And I'm gonna use my spatula because I don't have one of those cool things to break this up. And this is roughly 2.5 pounds of ground meat. Fits perfectly in here. I don't add any oil because I find that the beef creates enough oil in the pan. And I like to hit it again with a second round of seasoning. Since that was kind of just on one side, I feel like it unevenly seasons it. And if you're making a specific recipe with this, you can obviously season with more than just these simple ingredients. So 2.5 pounds of ground beef is roughly 5 servings, but it really depends on your macros and how much you want to consume, how much protein you need, what your calorie goal is. But again, this is roughly 5 portions, so perfect for a weekly meal prep. Okay, so our beef is all cooked through, and I am going to put this in a separate container. That way we can drain all this fat as well. If you are prepping this for the week, you can go ahead and transfer it to a glass storage container. You can also pre-portion it out so that you have already weighed portions available for you for even easier meals. And a serving size, depending on your needs, is anywhere from half a cup to a full cup. It also depends on how fatty your meat is, what your protein goals are, what your appetite's like. Depending on the other ingredients, sometimes I'll even reduce the amount of meat if I'm adding something else that's high in protein. So a little bit about this episode's recipe. So we are going to use our prepped ground beef. We're also going to use about a cup of broccoli, about a half a cup of chopped carrots. And for the sauce, I'm going to do a combination of two sauces. So I am going to use some side dish creamy sesame because this brings really great flavor. But the reason I am actually also adding some low sodium soy sauce is because this does drive up the calories a little bit more. So to make it a little more macro friendly, I will be using some soy sauce as well to add a lot of flavor and depth to it. You can also make your own marinade, which I do often. Typically when I'm cooking on my own, I will do a mix of soy sauce, sriracha, and honey. And I'll usually also make a slurry with cornstarch so that it kind of thickens up. That is totally optional. You don't have to. You can kind of go about adding whatever ingredients you want. Some other vegetable options, you can absolutely, if you want to add even more veggies and volume, riced cauliflower. I also really love this hearts of palm rice. You can also just serve this over regular rice if you want. Edamame is great with these flavors for a boost of protein. I was also thinking of adding some cabbage slaw, again, to volumize the meal a little bit. You can mix and match whatever ingredients you want to add. You could do green onion. I'm gonna add some sesame seeds on top, but since we're focused on 5 ingredient recipes, I'm gonna keep it at 5. So let's go ahead and jump in, get everything prepared and made. So we're just gonna go ahead and chop some broccoli into smaller pieces. And I suggest roughly 1 cup per serving. Feel free to do more if you'd like. Broccoli's super nutritious, so it's a great addition to your meal. And I am going to be making 2 servings because my husband needs food too. But if you're just doing 1 serving, what I've chopped here looks like it's already enough. And I know I've already shared my love for this chopping board in some of my other videos, but it's so convenient to bring things over to the stove when I have a container that I can just put everything in. And wood is really great so that you don't have those microplastics leaching into your food. All right, so now we're chopping up carrots. And like I said, I'm keeping this one simple, but honestly, the more different types of vegetables you add to this, the more diverse the micronutrient profile is going to be. So feel free to add on whatever veggies. If you have bok choy, that's great. So this is kind of like an Asian inspired dish, but you could add peppers if you wanted to, onion. I'll probably add some green onion just as garnish on top. But again, we're keeping it simple for this recipe with just 5 ingredients. If you wanted to streamline this even further, you can even use shredded carrots or carrot chips. That would save on prep time. Same thing with the broccoli. You can use a broccoli slaw if you wanted to. You can even use a bag of coleslaw mix so you have both the carrots and the cabbage. Okay, so let's put our carrots in here so we can bring it over to our pan. So I did end up leaving some fat from the ground beef so that I don't have to add any extra fat. But if you are adding extra, some sesame oil does work really well with these flavors. You can also use avocado or olive oil. We are gonna add the carrots first because they do need a little bit more time than the broccoli. So just while that's cooking, we're gonna look at the ingredients of this sauce a little bit. So we can see here that it is about 100 calories for 2 tablespoons. We're gonna use 1 tablespoon for each serving here. And it's got great ingredients. You can see the first ingredient is coconut aminos. You can obviously swap the soy sauce for coconut aminos if you prefer. coconut blossom nectar, sea salt, sesame paste, pineapple juice. So it's naturally sweetened with the pineapple, and you can see that these are all great ingredients. I mentioned this brand in my Caesar chaffle video as well, but highly recommend if you want a super simple and healthy sauce. Now that the carrots have had some time to soften, we're gonna add our broccoli. Okay, so we're just gonna toss up our veggies and put the lid on to help them cook and steam. While that's cooking, tell me what veggies you would choose for this recipe. I make stuff like this all the time. This is kind of one of my go-to meals for the week because it is so simple to make. It's ready in less than 20 minutes and it's delicious. And if you want more meals like this, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications because I've got a lot more high protein, low effort meals coming right at you. Okay, we don't want to cook our veggies too long. I mean, I like my broccoli like slightly crispy, but we can go ahead and add in our beef and our sauce now. And roughly half a tablespoon of soy sauce per serving. And we're just going to mix this up so it's well flavored and combined. Feel free if you want to add any additional seasoning, you can add some sriracha for a kick, some chili oil. That would also be a great addition to this. I wish you could smell it. It smells so good. And we're all done. I hope you enjoyed making this meal with me today, because I know I did. Make sure if you're not already subscribed and have notifications turned on that you do that, because I have a bunch more 5-ingredient, high protein, low effort recipes coming your way, so stay tuned. For this recipe, we're gonna need our prepped ground beef, zucchini, of course, marinara sauce, some kind of extra veggie. I'm choosing spinach. You could use onion, you could use extra tomatoes, kale, whatever you decide works, and some cheese. For additional seasonings, we are going to use oregano or Italian seasoning and garlic powder. These are optional. These will have great flavor without them, so let's go ahead and get started. First things first, prepping our zucchini. Now, since these are zucchini boats, we do want to make sure that we are getting larger ones so that we have room for more filling. So these are perfect for this recipe. So let's get started. Just going to chop off the tops. We can leave the other ends on. You can chop them off if you want, but make sure to keep it pretty thin if you want to. And then we're just gonna slice these in half as well. And I am gonna be making 2 servings for this recipe. I will put all these specific ingredients and macros in the description as usual. Feel free to make single serve or double for meal prep. And now we're just gonna go ahead and scoop out the flesh. And you can totally save the flesh for another recipe. You can put it in smoothies, you can put it in baked goods, you can put it in a skillet. You could honestly even chop it up and mix it with this recipe if you wanted to. So it's up to you how you want to use the scraps. And we want to make it fairly deep so that we can fill it with a lot of goodies inside, but we want to keep some of the zucchini. And that looks perfect. And this is actually the perfect time to use this cutting board I have, because I can just scoop the guts into this really helpful tray to kind of keep my service a little bit cleaner. And then I can honestly just put a lid on this container and store it in the fridge until I'm ready to use it. Love this cutting board. Have you ever made a zucchini recipe and it got really watery? That's because zucchinis have a high water concentration. So before you bake or cook them, it's actually a really good idea to salt them, let them sit for 10 minutes up to a half an hour, and then dab the moisture off, and that will reduce the moisture in your recipe. So we are going to salt these and let them sit in a colander for a little while. In the meantime, we're gonna get our filling together. As I mentioned, we are going to be making 2 portions of this recipe. So we're going to start with 2 cups of ground beef so that we can hit our protein goals. Now, if you don't have your ground beef pre-prepped, brown your ground beef as normal, and then you can also add your extra vegetable and your sauce during that time as well. So I'm just gonna go ahead and mix it in a big bowl here, since honestly, I avoided using vegetables that needed like extra cooking beyond the oven, just so I wouldn't have to dirty my pan. Okay, so roughly 2 cups. This is 90-10 lean ground beef. So it's like 32 grams of protein, I think, per cup. I will have exact macros in the description, so make sure you check that out so that you have all the accurate numbers for yourself. And I'm just using my kitchen shears to get the spinach into smaller pieces so that it's nice and well dispersed. And between the beef and the spinach in this recipe, it is a great source of iron. And I looked on my log, and 1 cup of 90-10 ground beef is actually 36 grams of protein. So this is super protein packed. And we're going to start with half of a cup, roughly, of marinara sauce. And just tossing to combine. I do think I'm gonna add a little more marinara sauce. So a cup, and this looks perfect, nice and well coated, mixed in, love it. If you want, you can also mix your cheese in. I'm going to keep it, actually I'm gonna mix some in and keep the rest as a topping. Totally optional, just depends on your macros. While we're waiting for the zucchinis to draw some of that moisture out, just a little bit about the recipe. So the macros for this are roughly 44 grams per serving, about 430 calories, I believe, and that's based on half an ounce of part skim mozzarella cheese and a 90-10 ratio of ground beef. Obviously, if you do fat-free cheese or a maybe like 97% lean ground beef, you're going to have a much lower calorie content. So feel free to adjust according to your macros, and vice versa. If you're using an 80% ground beef and a full fat mozzarella cheese, then your macros are going to be, or your calories are going to be a lot higher, and protein is also going to be lowered, because the 1 cup of ground beef will have more fat and less protein. So keep that in mind as you're making, and really any recipe with cheese and ground beef, is the fat content can really make a difference in terms of the amount of calories and potentially protein. Since the zucchinis are going to be ready soon, I also preheated the oven to 400 so that we can put these together and bake them. So let's pat our zucchini dry and get some of that salt off. I remember one time I was visiting my brother and his family, and we went to a farmer's market, and I saw this giant zucchini. So of course I bought it and made a giant zucchini boat with it. Totally optional, but if you want, you can season your zucchini with some garlic and or oregano or Italian seasonings. And now to carefully scoop in our mixture. And these can work perfect for an easy weeknight dinner. You can meal prep them. Again, you can make as many portions as you want. So 1 portion would be 2 zucchini boats with about a cup of ground beef. Adjust to meet your macros and depending on specifically what ingredients you are using. And now to top them with some cheese, the finishing touch. And this is freshly shredded cheese because it does tend to melt better. Feel free to use whatever you want. This is mozzarella. You could totally use cheddar if that's what you have, or some kind of other cheese. And we are going to bake these in the oven for about 25 minutes. And I should actually mention that you don't want to use super lean cheese and beef for this, because you do need some healthy fats in the meal. So make sure that you are accounting for that. You don't want to make your fat intake too low, because fat is obviously an important macro that you need to get enough of daily in order to regulate your hormones and temperature. Let's do a taste test. That is super flavorful. The sauce that you use definitely makes a big difference. Since we're not really adding a lot of extra flavor, the sauce is going to be a big flavor vessel. So highly recommend picking your favorite marinara sauce for this. You can obviously also add other spices and things, but we wanted to keep this simple. Now this one skillet recipe is perfect for those busy nights when you need something easy, but that's also high in protein and high in fiber. This recipe has roughly 35 grams of protein, give or take, and about 11 grams of fiber. Thank you to the beans, of course. And it's really easy to throw together. You don't even need a cutting board for it. For this recipe, we are going to, of course, be using our ground beef that we prepped already. And this recipe would also be great with ground turkey. You can also use chicken. These would be really, really great flavors that meld well with all of those types of proteins. If you're vegetarian, you could also technically use tempeh. I think that would go really well with these flavors. Tofu as well, because it takes on whatever flavor you cook it with. You'll also need some cauliflower rice. You can blend this up like I did using a food processor, or you can find bags of frozen or fresh cauliflower rice at your grocery store. We're also gonna need some black beans. You could sub for kidney beans or cannellini beans, cannelli? The white ones, the white bean, Great Northern, that works too. But black beans kind of go with the, like taco seasoning we're gonna be using. Now, to keep this recipe just 5 ingredients, I am going to be using a taco seasoning mix. But to be honest, when I have the time, I make my own. I will throw together like a cumin, a paprika, a chili powder, a garlic powder, and just use those seasonings separately. So you can do that, or you can go the easy route for that really quick fix. And last, we are going to use some diced tomatoes. I did get fire roasted, again, to kind of go with that like taco seasoning type of flavor. You can use regular, you can honestly also use fresh and chop them up, maybe with a little bit of tomato sauce or even a little bit of salsa. So this recipe can be really versatile. You can kind of adjust and swap the ingredients a little bit and come up with a really delicious outcome. We're also gonna add some optional toppings at the end, which I will share when we get to them. So let's go ahead and get started because I'm hungry. I also forgot to mention that if it fits your macros, you can also add in some regular rice as well. This just happens to fit my macros better to keep it a little bit more low calorie, but feel free to do like half cauliflower rice, half regular rice, or all rice. I mean, this adds nice veggies and volume. You can switch it up for whatever meets your specific needs. So now we're gonna get started. We're gonna start it off with 3 cups cauliflower rice. 6 ounces ground beef. Feel free to use more if it fits your macros. And a whole can of diced tomatoes. Again, I'm picking the fire roasted because I want that kind of flavor, but feel free to use plain. 1 cup of black beans. About 3 teaspoons of taco seasoning. And give it a good mix so that seasoning gets everywhere. While we're waiting about 15 minutes for the food to cook on the stove, I did want to go over some of the recipe benefits. So ground beef, I feel like beef gets kind of a bad rap, but it's actually a great source of protein. It's super high in iron, zinc, and vitamin B12. As I've mentioned, the type that you use, the macros will vary drastically. What I actually did, this is a fresh batch of ground beef because I can't film all my recipes at once. Sometimes what I actually do, especially if you want a more budget-friendly option, because the price increases dramatically the leaner you get, is actually mix a lean and a less lean ground beef for some more high volume, but a little bit more friendly to your pocket. So this is actually a mix of 85 and 93. So it is a little less macro friendly, but it's a little bit more budget friendly. Obviously, the beans in the recipe add even more protein and a ton of fiber. This recipe does have about 11 grams of fiber, so it is a great source. And did you see how much food that was? That is 2 servings. It is super high volume because of all that cauliflower rice. Cauliflower is a great way to add volume to the food because honestly, it kind of takes on whatever flavors you add with it. So you're gonna end up with a really, really flavorful recipe in the end. As I mentioned, you can buy riced cauliflower in the frozen section, or I think they have fresh stuff in the produce section. Obviously that gets on the pricier side, that pre-prep stuff, but it makes it so easy. Anytime I have a cauliflower going bad, what I do is if I'm not gonna use it, I will use my food processor to rice it and then freeze it. So the stuff I had was actually frozen from my freezer because I didn't get to use it when I had intended to. I was gonna make this recipe last week. Things didn't work out, so I just froze my beef and my cauliflower. And the rest of it is canned stuff. So that's literally how easy this is. I literally put everything in a pan. It took 5 minutes. So this machine I love. It has a ton of different attachments like an immersion blender. It can shred things. It can blend things. I made my viral cheesecake recipe with this. I made my viral pina colada ice cream with this. So everyone always asks me about this, so I just wanted to share a little bit more. And I will leave the link to it in the description, of course, so that if you want to check it out, you can grab it. It is probably my most used kitchen tool, other than my pots and pans. Those are probably my most used kitchen tool. This is next up. I hope you're enjoying cooking with me so far. If you like recipes like this that are easy, high protein, high fiber, healthy and delicious, then make sure you hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss anything, because I have a lot more of these coming your way. I'd also love for you to tell me what recipes you'd like to see next. Are there any things that you want to see healthier versions of that I can help you make some extra swaps? I'd love to hear ideas that you want me to share and make so that I can make content that you enjoy, because that's really my goal. About 15 minutes and it is ready. Let's talk toppings, because that's the fun part, right? You could definitely top with some cheese, though I am not, because cheese is a little bit caloric for me right now. I'm trying to keep this a little bit closer to 400, so I'm gonna skip the cheese, but again, if it fits your needs. So cheese would be a great topping for that, taco feel. You could also use this as a taco filling. Like you could put this in a wrap or put it in taco shells or eat with tortilla chips or nachos. I am going to chop up some red onion to put on top of this for a little bit of extra flavor. You could also saute the onions directly in this if you prefer. I am going to top it with a couple scoops of Greek yogurt. You could also opt for sour cream, though Greek yogurt is higher in protein and lower in calories, so that is always my choice. I personally don't buy sour cream. I always just use Greek yogurt instead. I also picked some fresh cilantro from my garden, so I am going to be topping that for some extra flavor and just kind of fresh vibrancy to the meal. And I forgot it because I washed it. Of course, it goes great with some avocado. This already has some healthy fat in it from the beef, but if you want some of that creaminess from the avocado and healthy fats, you can also use this to top it. Chopping a little bit of some red onion. You can use whatever onion you have on hand. Honestly, you don't have to use red onion. So just sprinkle some on top, just a little, and add some nice vibrancy and color. Eat the rainbow, right? And a scoop or two of Greek yogurt. I like the creaminess it adds, and it adds some little bit of a protein boost too, which is always great. And cilantro. Now I know cilantro, it's kind of a love or hate thing. I was always like, it's okay. I've grown to love it. I really, really like it now. So I'm just gonna cut some on here again for some freshness and flavor. Bon appetit. Wow, that's good. Taco seasoning has a good kick to it too. Perfect. I am so excited for today's recipe because if you haven't tried it, the rice paper trend has been amazing. I've made croissants with them. I made a sweet apple cheesecake pie with them. I've also done some like stuff with berries and cheesecakey flavors. I've tried a few different things and everything has been delicious. So I'm really excited to try this. And I'm also curious if you've tried it yet, because it's been taking social media by storm and I've seen so many different varieties of recipes using them. But anyway, let's go over the ingredients for the recipe and then get started. So of course we are going to need rice papers, and we are going to be using 3 per portion. We are going to need our ground beef, of course, as our protein. You're gonna need an egg, and that basically activates the rice paper. You could use water too, but you know how you add egg washes on top of things? That's why we're gonna use the egg. You can add a little bit of milk. I hear that that's really helpful too in making it like a nice golden crispy crust, but that's totally optional. For our veggie, we're gonna add a bell pepper. You could use a different veggie if you wanted to. You could use spinach, you could use onion, you could use carrots. I was even thinking of doing like sauteing some cabbage with some tomato sauce for kind of like a stuffed cabbage feel, but I opted for this instead. I'm also gonna add some onion because I think onions just add some great flavor and it's just a really simple addition. But again, optional because we know we're keeping it 5 ingredients. We're gonna add some mozzarella cheese to make it nice and cheesy and delicious. And for seasonings, you can totally just do salt and pepper. This will give you kind of enough flavor, but I am going to enhance the flavors by adding some cumin, some garlic powder, and some cinnamon. I wanted to kind of do something a little bit different. I feel like, you know, sometimes I lean on very like, I guess kind of taco seasoning spices a lot. So adding the cinnamon, I honestly love recipes like this, pairs so well with a ground beef. So I think it's going to be delicious. Anyway, I'm hungry, so let's get started. It's a good thing I decided to use pepper because these kind of look like they're getting past their due date. So it's a good thing we're using them up today. So you're just gonna need half of a pepper per serving. And we want our strips or pieces to be nice and small. So we are going to finely dice. Okay, and then of course, once we have them in strips, we can dice them smaller. And you can use whatever color pepper you want. I just thought green would pair well with the other flavors I was using, but it would be delicious with any variety. And for the onion, we also want to make sure our onion is nice and finely diced as well. And I would say about 2 to 3 tablespoons of each. We're going to see how much we're able to fit. It might be a little bit too much pepper, but we're going to do our best. We've got 3 ounces ground beef, our onion, our bell pepper. Season to taste. I'm just doing a few sprinkles of each. Oh, that's not open. Now we're good to go with the cinnamon, pepper of course. And I am gonna add some smokiness using this smoked hickory salt, but you can use regular salt. You can totally also add your cheese in, but I'm gonna add it when I wrap it up. And just toss to combine. And now for the fun part, to get our rice papers ready. So for this step, you're gonna need a shallow plate or bowl, and you're of course gonna need your rice papers, an egg, and if you wanna add the milk, have that handy, as well as a whisk or a fork. Got our egg, and pro tip, use the shell to get the shell if you get any in. Have you tried that hack? Because I swear by it. And we're gonna do a little splash of milk and whisk it up. And we're gonna do a little dip. Make sure to spin it and get the whole thing. Okay, and we are just gonna keep taking our wraps and getting them wet in the egg. And it's really important that you overlap them. And it's okay if they still feel a little bit hard when you put them down. Letting them sit for a second will get them softer. So this first one here is already super soft, and these other two will also get there. And we're just gonna go ahead and spoon our filling kind of on one edge-ish. This smells so good already. Okay, and it looks like it's gonna be the perfect amount of filling. So you wanna make sure it's nice and even. Perfect. And it's all in. Okay, and now we're just gonna sprinkle our cheese across the whole thing. And this is about 1/2 ounce. Feel free to add more if that fits your macros. Gotta get it all on because it's cheese, obviously. Very carefully, we're gonna peel this up, making sure not to break it. And we're just gonna fold it over top of our mix. So we wanna make sure that we get this nice and tight. So I am gonna push some of this over before I start rolling so that we can get a nice tight roll. So we're just gonna go ahead and roll it. And actually, I'm gonna wet my fingers to make this a little easier. And we can also make sure that we tuck in our edge, get the bottom up a little so it's easier. Takes a little patience, but once you get it, you're good to go. You can pull this up and wrap it on. And from one end, we can start rolling. Just careful not to let the bottom break. You can also make these into like logs instead of a spiral. That would also be a great idea. And here we are. Optionally, you can sprinkle it with sesame seeds. I'm gonna carefully transfer our roll onto some parchment paper, and we are going to air fry it for about 10 to 15 minutes on about 375. Looks good. I'm so excited because this is going to be a very flavorful dish, and it is insanely simple. So I'm gonna go ahead and go over the ingredients, and these ingredients are going to be for 2 portions, so you can adjust accordingly to make as many or as few portions as you want. That's especially easy if you have your ground beef prepped already, because you can just use the amount for 1 serving, or you can use it all for, meal prep or a family meal. So speaking of ground beef, we are going to use a little over 2 cups of ground beef. This is 10 ounces, so like maybe 2 1/4 cups roughly, and that will get us to about 40 grams of protein per serving. Again, as usual, adjust to meet your macros. For the sauce, we are going to do a super easy mix of gochujang and low sodium soy sauce. Of course, you can use coconut aminos if that's what you prefer. That's gonna add a lot of flavor, but if you wanna level up the flavor, some optional add-ons would be some sesame oil or even some garlic or roasted garlic oil. These are totally optional. It's gonna be a great alone. Just remember that adding oils does add significant fat, so make sure if you do choose to add these ingredients that you double check how much you're adding so that you can still make sure this meal meets your macros. Now, our veggies. What we don't have pictured here yet, because I need to pick it from my garden, is going to be bok choy. Okay, that's gonna add our vegetable and volume to our meal. We're gonna cook it down a little bit, and it's gonna get marinated in these flavors, and it's gonna be delicious. If you don't have bok choy or you prefer to use cabbage, that is going to be a great swap for this recipe. Another optional ingredient is some cucumber at the end, just for that added freshness and volume to the dish. I know I'm getting hungry, so let's go ahead and grab our bok choy and start cooking. So let's get in here and get our bok choy. Just look at this beauty. So fresh, I love it. All right, we've got our bok choy harvest. So we're just gonna get these all chopped up, and we're gonna make sure we cook the stems first because they do take a little longer. And we're also just gonna mix our gochujang and soy sauce before putting it on the stove, just so we can make sure that our ingredients are going to be well combined. So let's go do that. We're just gonna go ahead and chop some of the stems so that they can cook a little bit longer on our skillet. And totally optional, you can chop this however you want. I'm gonna do sort of like a basil roll technique for mine, but you can chop in chunks, you can chop smaller pieces, whatever you feel like doing. And this looks like it'll roughly be 3 cups, but as always, adjust to meet your needs if you want to add more, or if you want to add this plus cabbage, totally up to you how much you want to use in this recipe. So we're all chopped up and this looks good. Now you can totally mix your sauce directly in the pan, but to make sure our gochujang is well combined and doesn't just kind of stay in one clump, we're gonna mix it up with the soy sauce before getting over to our stove. So we just need 1 tablespoon of gochujang. Feel free to add more to your taste. And about 2 tablespoons soy sauce. And I am gonna add a touch of garlic oil. About half a teaspoon I probably added. And just mix everything up. All right, let's get over to the stove. So if your beef isn't pre-prepped and you're cooking it from raw, just make sure that you cook it through and then add your sauce and continue the process as I show it. Our ground beef and our sauce, and give it a good shuffle to combine. And we're gonna add our stems first so that these can cook down a little bit. And once our stems are a little soft, we can go ahead and add our bok choy leaves. And we just want to kind of let these wilt down a little bit, so just another minute or so. And this looks perfectly wilted, so we're going to go ahead and remove it from the heat and get ready to serve it. For plating and serving, you can absolutely serve this over some brown rice, some regular rice, or you could also do cauliflower or hearts of palm rice if you want something that's a little bit more lower in calorie. Because the rices don't quite meet my macros, I'm gonna keep this just the veggies and serve it in this bowl. And then we're also gonna add some extra toppings to it. So this is a super high protein, iron-rich meal that is packed with flavor, only using those simple ingredients, right? Now, as for additional toppings, like I said, we're gonna do the cucumber. You could also do some carrots would be great, some radish would be great, even some edamame. And that freshness will really balance out the spice in this dish. I also picked some cilantro from my garden because, to be honest, it's a little overgrown. I also made a cilantro crema, or I guess it's a crema, cilantro Greek yogurt sauce that would be really good as well if you wanted kind of that like creaminess to it. Of course, some sesame seeds are a great option, green onion, and to be honest, if you want even more spice, go for that sriracha. Sriracha mayo works too. That's just a little bit higher in calories, but it will absolutely give that kind of like creaminess to it if you want to add that in. Just a little bit of cucumber to this. Anytime I have green onion, I actually regrow them in water. You just keep the stems and you add it in some water and they will legit just regrow. And some more green with some fresh cilantro. Cilantro is definitely a love-hate thing. I love it. You can leave it out if you don't. This is lean green machine right here. And before I forget to share, this is what I meant. Just put your green onion in water and they will grow. These were short little stubby things when I added them a week or so ago. Great kitchen hack. Time to give this a taste test. Bon appetit. Very flavorful. It has just the perfect amount of kick to it. So if you don't like spice at all, definitely use a little less. But to be honest, it's like the right level of spiciness in my mind. It's just got a slight kick. Anyway, highly recommend. Hope you make it and enjoy. I really hope you enjoyed making this recipe with me today. If you did, please subscribe and make sure to like this video so that you don't miss any more high protein, delicious meals. And your support truly means the world to me as a creator. Can't wait to share more recipes and health and weight loss tips with you in the future. Thanks again and see you next time.